First of all, you have to realize that I use the word paradigm in a different sense, in a much wider sense than it has been used usually before. So for me, a paradigm is a world view which does include how we experience the world around us and ourselves and our role in the world, and how we interpret our experiences and the things we see. And this changes dramatically during a paradigm shift. The paradigms are created over generations by traditions, by culture, by religion, and so on, that actually determines what you are allowed to believe, what you are allowed to believe is possible. You see? So a lot of things that were considered totally impossible only 150, 200 years ago are now part of our daily lives, and we don't even give it a thought. Like, for instance, radio, television, cell phones, computers, and a lot of other things. Internet, all this. It was totally unthinkable not so long ago. And now it's sort of our daily reality, and we don't think about it even. Well, the paradigm shift is a shift from, let's take an example from the 16th century, when, thanks to new inventions of telescope and microscope, our knowledge was expanded exponentially. We could see into the space, into other planets and so on, and we could see into the sort of small world, the micro world, through the microscope. And of course, that means that we got a totally new understanding of the world around us. And especially when it comes to astronomy, it's well known that, the classical worldview was that the Earth was the center of the universe, and it had been created by the Almighty during, this is the Christian story of course, during 7 days, or 6 days rather, only a few thousand years ago. And all the creatures and everything had been created by God. And on the 7th day he rested, as it says, that's the Sunday. So this story was actually literally believed by a lot of people, and was sort of preached by religion, and still is in some circles in the United States, for instance. But of course this was clearly not true when you started to be able to see into the cosmos and understand these things in a different way. That's the paradigm shift, you see. Now the present paradigm shift is towards what I call the Aquarian Paradigm, which is an astrological word, of course, and it's because its characteristics coincide with what is typical of the sign of Aquarius in astrology. And it has two kind of strands to it. One is the social one, which was first manifested through the American Declaration of Independence in 1776, and which brings in new ideas, basically. I mean, theoretically they had existed to some extent during some periods, like in ancient Greece, but they had never really been implemented on a larger scale, which they have been since then. I'm talking about democracy, about the principle of equality, of equal worth for all human beings, the abolition of slavery, and so on. And this has been developing ever since in the entire world, basically, but it's still a fight between democracy and not democracy, as we know. Now the other strand, as it were, is based on innovation and new inventions, and especially electricity and electronics. Because until the late 18th century we did not understand electricity, and we were not able to use it. And that is what has been at the kind of driving engine, you might say, of all our technical evolution or development since then, which has been phenomenal. I mean, until that time, humanity didn't evolve a lot, really. You can go back to Egypt, and there are not such enormous differences until the 17th century, maybe. But from the 18th century onwards, there's been an explosion based on innovation and electricity above all, and communications, of course, which now are based on electricity. And so this is another typical thing of the Aquarian paradigm, is communication, the connection between separate entities, and that can happen on several different levels. One is physical communication, like fast trains, automobiles, airplanes, more so, spaceships, which can connect even different planets. Now this is very Aquarian. It's something never before seen in human history. Well, in known human history, because there are very old, of course, stories from India, among other places, which can be interpreted as if this was something that existed in a previous civilization that we have no sort of real knowledge about. So we are in the middle of this evolution, and of course the invisible reality, as I call it, plays a very important part in this also. What do I mean by the invisible reality? I mean, on the personal level, thoughts and emotions. You can't see them, but they are the basis and the origin of everything that you can see, basically. I mean, everything that we do is based, first you have to have a thought, and then it has to be driven by emotion to make it happen. Now, on a more objective, external level, this translates into energy and information, or rather the other way I should say, information corresponding to thought and energy corresponding to emotions. And these are invisible, but they are what drives everything, and they are the basis and the substance of everything that you can see, of everything that is manifest in the physical world. And now, of course, what happens is that we are becoming aware of the invisible reality more and more, which people were not before. I mean, they did know about, shall we say, ghosts, maybe parapsychological phenomena, but it couldn't be explained, and it was at least when the scientific paradigm arrived on the scene in the 15th, 16th century, 16th, 17th century, actually maybe more like the 17th century, then everything that could not be explained in materialistic terms was sort of thrown out and considered superstition and, you know, fantasy and so on. And now, of course, we have come into another phase, and we now know that there is a reality which lies behind the physical reality, and as I said before, that is information and energy. Now, what my task, as I see it, is to make people aware of what is happening, why it's happening, where it is leading, and what they can do to, shall we say, make the most of it and survive in these very fast changing circumstances. Oh yeah, of course, because if you don't follow, I mean, if you don't adapt to evolution, to development, you are in trouble. Some people may discover all these things by themselves, I don't know, as I have, but I mean, it's cost me a lot of work and study, and it's taken a long time. And so most people do not devote the time and the attention necessary to become aware. And that's where I'm trying to help them. They don't need newspapers, because you don't get the truth or the wisdom from newspapers, unfortunately. But they can learn from each other, and you know, very many of these, even illiterate people, are very wise people. They have learned from nature, they have their traditions, and so on. So that's not really the problem, it's not there. The problem is, in a way, that the political system is very much old paradigm and actually opposes the paradigm shift. And of course that provides or produces a sort of fight between the old paradigm and the emerging new Aquarian paradigm. And we're in the middle of that fight right now. And it's coming to a head, it's coming to a culmination. I think maybe even as we're talking, or over the next year or two. And so it will be interesting to see how people wake up and react, if they do that in time, to avoid terrible suffering for hundreds of millions of people, which are totally unnecessary, but unfortunately are enforced by the old paradigm rulers of our planet at this time.